is given for research data management. I think probably all of the people in this meeting know how much time and resources can go into research data management. And we all probably also know how underappreciated this effort can sometimes feel. So with ing.grid, we had the idea that we can create a platform where you can get actual peer-reviewed publications of data, of software, of research data management practices as well. And our aim was also to build not only a national, but also an international network around research data management and the publishing of this topic. And last but not least, I would say that we are driven by engineering communities, but you will also see later in my talk that we are not only an engineering community, we are also very open to interdisciplinary inputs from a wide range of other communities. The principles behind ing.grid are these three open points. So the open access, ing.grid is a diamond open access journal. It is really the main, I can say, the main principle behind ing.grid. It is open access and it will always stay that way. We have developed our own open peer review process that I will also show in a lot more detail later on. And we are fostering methods or encouraging people to publish open data and also to open up their code, the code behind their publications. And who are we actually doing this all for? So ing.grid is a journal, as you can also hear, at least if you are German speaking in its name, it is a journal for the community of engineering sciences, including mechanical engineering, electrical, civil, computational materials engineering, in the academic research, but also in the non-academic research, like research institutes like Fraunhofer and so on. But we are also open for contributions from the industry and for the industry. And we also want to include inputs from humanities, from law, from economics, from the managerial sciences, because these ones can also be very useful when it comes to research data management. Also libraries that know a lot about knowledge management, computing centers that have very, very interesting inputs and experiences with regard to, for example, data infrastructure, are all our addressees on the author side, but of course also on the readership side. For regarding the scope of the journal or the focus and scope, the topics that ing.grid is dealing with, there's a broad range of topics. So we are not only concerned like defining research data management as a topic. Of course, it's a bit difficult because it can span over a whole range of topics such as data literacy. So we actually come from an academic environment. So we think a lot about how do we make people do research data management? And that is, of course, connected a lot to data literacy in the curriculum, in the engineering curriculum, but also in just, like maybe some workshops with colleagues, like how do we teach people how to do research data management? Another important topic is the data infrastructure. So how do we actually build up infrastructure to make research data management possible? And data governance, this is interesting, especially when we think about in mechanical engineering, we often deal with data that comes maybe with some non-disclosure agreements, right? So this is really difficult when we then want to make fair data, but we need this data because we have industry projects. So how do we deal with this? Concepts about this can also be included in ing.grid, data economics, data ethics, also when it comes to personal data, and also just data sets, documenting data sets with metadata, or making data management software. All of these things are within the scope of ing.grid. And my colleague Kevin, he likes, the co-founder of ing.grid, he likes to use the Tower of Babel as a metaphor for ing.grid, because ing.grid, you know, we want it to be a really fair journal, but as you can imagine, this is a very ambitious goal. So we like to say that communication is and mutual exchange about fair data management is the key to getting closer to this ambitious goal of being truly fair and of truly fostering fair publications. So we also see ing.grid as a platform for fair communication, and an exchange about fair data management topics. And how do we do that? So here with this pyramid, we like to kind of show all the building blocks that we hope are taking us in the right direction of being a truly fair journal. So you can see a lot of the occurrence of the word open is there a lot. So we are an open access journal, we have open peer review. We are also running on an open source publishing platform. And now I will go through all of these points that you see here one by one, just showing you where in there you can recognize the fair aspects. So let's first look at the open access and the open source publishing, like how we are running on an open source platform. So as I said, ing.grid is an Diamond open access journal. So the articles are freely available for anyone to read, share, and redistribute. And also there are no fees for the author, their university, or their funding agency to publish the article there. So there are really no article processing charges, no APCs. And you may, of course, wonder then how do we finance it? And I'll start with the personnel. So we are essentially 5 people in the core team. So the editor-in-chief, the managing editor, 3 managing editors working on part-time on ing.grid. So like me, I'm a PhD student, but I also work as a managing editor for ing.grid. And then we also have a student assistant, and this is financed through the NFDI for ing and Data Literacy Alliance, DALIA. And we are also getting a lot of publication support from the digital publishing team of the University Library of Darmstadt, without who this would really not be possible as easily as as it was. Not to say that it was easy, but yeah, the digital publishing team definitely offered us a lot of support, a lot of their experience with how to set up a journal, what are all of the things that we need to think of, and so on. And of course, they are also covering some of the maintenance costs, like server costs, hosting costs, and then some fees that are connected to publishing each article, like the XML conversion. So you can see them here. And yeah, you can also compare that to the last Elsevier journal that you have submitted something to, and just maybe think a little bit, yeah, where all that money goes there. So these are the costs that we are covering here with ing.grid. There were, of course, some other costs, like with the branding and so on. But yeah, other than that, it is still quite light, so to say. Continuing on that, as I said, we are running on an open source platform, Janeway, which is set up, or which is currently being developed still, or it is a final product, but it's still being developed further by the Open Library of Humanities. A very nice platform that also allowed us to have some of the suggestions that we had with regard to the open peer review process, which we developed ourselves. Basically, the programming team behind Janeway was very willing to implement any of the feedback and any of the suggestions that we had into their existing platform. So this was great. Also wouldn't have been possible with a different, let's say, a commercial publisher to really customize the workflow to the extent that we were able to do that with Janeway. And because it is an open source platform, theoretically, any journal can just take this platform and just set it up exactly the same way as we did, or reuse some parts of it. It is also very modular, so this would theoretically also be possible. Okay, and now let's get to the open peer review part. So the roles that we have in our journal are very similar to any journal that you know. So there are authors that are managing editors like myself. There are also topical editors that have a bit more of the domain knowledge. And there are reviewers, and then what's a bit special in ing.grid is that there are also like members of the community. So any person with a user account on ing.grid can also participate in the peer review or also comment on the articles published in ing.grid later on. And in ing.grid, we have like ing.grid is essentially two things. We have our own preprint server, and then we have the actual journal page, ing.grid.org. So you can see the preprint server. It is also part of ing.grid, but they are technically two different servers. And the open peer review is taking place on the preprint server completely. So when an author submits a manuscript, it is almost immediately published on the preprint server. Before that, we do some initial checks to see like the conformity with the template and so on. And yeah, the article maybe has some links to the software repository, to the data repository, and there are some metadata connected to it. And once this is done, we assign this article to a topical editor, and the topical editor invites reviewers, as you know it from everywhere, from any journal essentially. And then the peer review starts. So the reviewer submits a comment, and then, as I said, we are doing open peer review. So this peer review comment from the reviewer will end up on the preprint server, and it will be public. So what we decided to do is that the editor will check the comment to see if it is polite and constructive, so that we don't have any kind of impoliteness or harassment or not nice comments or, you know, reviews that really don't live up to some basic standard. And so if this comment is not polite and not constructive, then the reviewer actually has to redo the comment, and if it is okay, then the comment lands on the preprint server. And yeah, now it is time for the authors to react. So the authors essentially do the same thing. They write the response, and we check it again. And if it's okay, then also this author comment lands on the preprint server. And as I said, the community users also have a chance to participate in the review. So they can also write a comment that is also checked. And then the only difference between the reviewer comments and the community comments is that the authors are required to react to the reviewer comments, but they are not obliged to react to the community comments. And the community comments can also be submitted after the peer review is over. So those are the two small differences. So once the review round is over, on the preprint server, we will have, of course, all of the documents that we had there before, the manuscript PDF and the links to the software repository, to the data repository. And then we have also the entire review discussion there. And it looks like this. You can see all of the article metadata, like the title, some extra metadata. You can see here also all of the versions between the different rounds of review. It's a little tiny, but hopefully you can see it. And then, of course, there is the article as a PDF here. And the important part here is that the review discussion is also here, down here to be found. You can scroll through it and you can just basically see how the entire review discussion went. And if you want, you can also submit your own comments as a community user. Yeah, and so once this is done, once the article passes peer review, it will land on the actual journal page, and it will still be linked to the preprint, obviously, so that anyone that finds the actual article can still look back on basically the entire process of how this article went through peer review, all of the rounds, all of the versions, and so on. And that looks like this. So this is the article page that is also already as an HTML. And you have the download links, like the classic things. You have DOI, then you have here the links to software, and this is what I was talking about. There is also a link back to the preprint so that people can see the review discussion. So with this open peer review process, we are seeking to increase, obviously, the transparency of the review process. And yeah, you can also find some research articles that also claim that open peer review also improves review quality. I think it's very easy for everyone to imagine how that mechanism works, right? So while we do give the option for the reviewers to submit their reviews anonymously, we had quite many reviewers that also just submitted under their own name. And then, as you can imagine, you also strive for good review quality when you know that that comment will just be there for everyone to see. And with allowing the community comments, we are also fostering open scientific discussion and also kind of a, in German you call it Fehlerkultur, so accepting also maybe some mistakes, saying it's okay. I mean, everyone does mistakes, right? It's okay to point this out in a scientific discussion. And we are also hoping to engage the community, so you can write the comments even if the peer review is over. And these comments, you know, they don't have to be feedback. They can also be questions regarding the preprints. So in this way, yeah, ing.grid is also in a way more like a, I don't want to say like a forum, but it is going a bit into that direction. This is the timeline of the peer review process with with essentially 2 review rounds, the initial one and then 1 reworking of the article. And yeah, this whole process with, as I said, 2 review rounds takes right now 6 months, which is a very long time, and we realize that. But we are kind of torn between giving the reviewers and the authors enough time to work on their articles, to not like stress people too much, and having like a very short review process. Yeah, but this is how it currently looks. So the authors and the reviewers always have 4 weeks to react on the comments from one another. One thing I haven't talked about yet is what kind of submissions ing.grid actually takes. And we will say that we want to have transparent submissions. And what this means is that when you have written, for example, a manuscript and you've used some code and you've used some data to get the results that you are publishing there, then ing.grid requires you to submit also, or to link to those to that code and to the data. So with this, we are seeking to increase the transparency of the submissions of all of the parts, all of the research objects that were also created together with this submission. And this is why ing.grid takes 3 submission types. So we take manuscripts up here, then we take also software submissions, code submissions, and we take data submissions. And for each one of them, you have the main submission. So, for example, when you submit a manuscript, then obviously you have to submit the PDF file. But if there's some code that you use or some data, then you are required to link those as well. But the main submission in ing.grid can also be a software submission. So in that case, you will submit like the code stands in the foreground, and you will submit a short descriptor of this code. And with data, it's essentially the same thing. So if you submit a data set, then you also submit a short, we call it a descriptor, so a short manuscript describing it. And for each one, you have the mandatory material, as I said, and then optional material. Those are links to the data, links to the software, respectively. And right now, we are planning to also allow non-peer-reviewed articles. Those can be maybe some opinion pieces, some experience pieces, interviews that we want to conduct, and so on, to just kind of, again, enhance the scientific discussion about research data management. In this regard, I said that we want fair publications, and in the requirements, because, this is what I forgot to say. So all of these submission types undergo peer review, not only the manuscripts, but also if you make a software submission or a data submission, they also undergo peer review. So we also have a set of requirements, a set of guidelines for each one of these. And as an example, I will show you a part of the guidelines for the data publications. So we want fair data publications. So we looked at the FAIR principles and extracted from them the points that we thought were the best suited for journal submissions. So FAIR, let's go through all of the letters. So F is the findable. So data and its associated metadata is easy for both humans and machines to read. For this, the data sets in ing.grid are required to have a DOI. The data has to be described with relevant metadata. The metadata have to contain the DOI of the data set so that it's kind of findable both ways. And the data has to be deposited in a searchable data repository, such as an institutional repository, like we have the TU Data Lib here at TU Darmstadt. It can be a different one as well, or it can be one of the more well-known ones like Zenodo. Accessibility, so accessible data and its metadata are this is retrievable via standardized protocols. Here we require that the DOI references a page from which the data set can be easily downloaded. This is, of course, important in this peer review step. This data has to be we have to be able to download this data. The reviewer has to be able to download the data, and also, later the readers. The interoperable criterion. So the data needs to interoperate with applications or workflows for analysis, storage, and processing. So the data sets should be described by metadata using a formal, accessible, shared, and broadly applicable language for knowledge representation. And if possible, the metadata should use standardized vocabularies. And last but not least, the reusable. So the data should be both usable and reusable. This means that the data should be accurately described by metadata, documentation, license, and version. So we have to know what and how we can, like, what is this data actually and how we can use it. And the data sets should, of course, meet domain relevant community standards of formal quality. This is something that the reviewers will check because the reviewers are also the domain experts. And we have a similar set for the software submissions as well. Okay, now let me get to the next point about linked metadata. So what links all of the three entities or the three submission types together, and in fact all of the submissions in ing.grid, is metadata. And we are also currently working on a knowledge graph for the journal. Here the University Library of Darmstadt is supporting us a lot. So they are developing a model for the knowledge graph representing the journal. And yeah, you can see it on the right already, some of the entities, how they are connected with one another. And yeah, we want to still validate this against the data of the journal. So this only makes sense once we have a bit more submissions that we currently have. But yeah, this is the plan. And where we want to get with it is that we want to be able to answer some competency questions with this. So for example, which authors work on related topics, or which articles are related to one another, and so on. And yeah, we are currently in contact with one other journal that has already done a similar thing. Like you can see here, this is the graph of all of the authors that have worked on similar topics based on keywords by the Journal of Science Communication. Okay, now I'll get to the current status of the journal. So this is a timeline of how it all started. So the NFDI for ing started in October 2020. The journal was announced about a year later. And then we had the constituting meeting of the editorial board and the first submission last year. Yeah, and we presented at the Cordy conference and a lot of other conferences in the meantime. And now we are somewhere here in November 2023, just about to publish the first, or just about to close the first issue, basically. The editorial board, you probably recognize a couple of faces here. A lot of these people are people from the NFDI for ing, but not only. So we are very proud to have also members beyond the NFDI for ing, some people also from other NFDI consortia, and some people also beyond Germany, not that many, but we have, for example, Jane Weingart from South Africa, or Satoshi Watanabe from Japan, or Dajuan Wu from China. So this is also something that we still have to work on, but we are definitely striving to make the journal a bit more international. Looking at the numbers, we have, like we were just looking at the editorial board, so we have 21 topical editors. As I said, we have 3 managing editors. Counting up all the authors together, it's 52, quite a lot of reviewers as well, and quite a lot of community members. And the interesting numbers are here. So right now we have 3 finished peer-reviewed articles published on ing.grid and still 14 preprints in the pipeline. Some of them a bit more advanced, probably will publish about 2 more articles until the end of the year. But yeah, this is the current status. And then I also brought the usage statistics. So here you can see some of our articles. Of course, not really the full information because you don't know when they were published, but you can just, for the information, we are getting quite a lot of downloads and views for some of them, especially the ones like these 2 here, down here, that are also already published on ing.grid as peer-reviewed articles. Some of the challenges that we are facing is obviously completing the current issues, because we are also doing one issue, a special issue from the NFDI for ing conference from last year still. But I would say the biggest challenge that we are facing is the publishing time, which is long by default, but like in concept, but actually also in reality, it's even slower. This is, of course, due to the fact that we are just starting. We need to figure out how to make the processes, how strict do we want to be, how do we make both the reviewers and the editors, and sometimes even ourselves, keep the deadlines that we set. But yeah, it is a challenge that we know, and we are currently working hard to improve it. And the last point, like indexing of the journal in the directory of open access journals, DOAJ, and Scopus is something that we want to do. And in order to have a journal index there, you have to fulfill a number of criteria. Some of them are more like formal criteria, like information that you have to have on your website. Basically, like describing the whole review process, describing all the guidelines, having some code, like having a code of conduct, licensing information, and so on, and having an ISSN. So we've done all of these formal requirements, What we still need to do is we have to publish enough articles, and we just have to wait. For Scopus, you have to wait for more than 2 years, have a good publication history, like a continuous one, which we do. We have enough articles in the pipeline. So we just have to be patient there, and then ing.grid will be indexed in both of these indexing schemes, repositories. I don't know what to call it. Okay. Now, if you want to interact with ing.grid, get to know the journal a bit better, inform yourself as an author, as a potential author, we have now started doing ing.grid office hours on Wednesdays between 9 and 11 on Zoom. And we are also planning an author workshop on the December 13th. So you are cordially invited. My colleague Isadora will be there, who's also here in this meeting. So yeah, you can definitely get in touch with us in that way. And we are also present at research data management related conferences in Germany, always at the NFDI for Ing conference, obviously. This year we were also at the Cordy conference, and we are planning to also do that in the future. So those ones are definitely the formats where you can for sure find us. And if you want to get actively involved, of course, you are invited to become an author. And you are, of course, cordially invited to become a reviewer or just comment on the existing contributions, view them critically, or just give good feedback. That also helps to tell people that you think that what they have been working on is good and interesting and useful. Maybe share some experience and so on. And you can also meet us on social media, on Mastodon, on YouTube, and on Twitter/X. So yeah, and with that, I would like to conclude my presentation or finish my presentation, and I'm of course open for your questions.
Many thanks to Michaela Leštáková for presenting, and I would like to add congratulations for launching like the first edition of your journal soon. So I mean, we can all imagine that it's really hard work to set up like the first edition of a journal. And I think like what you mentioned, like with this 1 year, that it takes like 1 year for sure. I mean, if you are setting up it for this first time, it always requires more time.
Yeah, that is
So
very true.
congratulations. And before we start with the discussion, I would like to thank you again for this very interesting talk, and also I would like to thank the audience on YouTube and on Zoom for joining us. And if you're interested in further talks, please have a look at our website for talks and other events of NFDI.